I love that you said. I was going to say that. I was like, I hope this isn't too controversial.
No, I mean, look, as three pediatricians, I think we can all probably say measles vaccines might be right down the middle of the pipe for us.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for doctors by doctors. I'm Dr. Michael Jerkins, joined by the one and only Dr. Ned Palmer. Dr. Palmer, how is life?
Life is good, Michael. Life is good over here in Detroit. How is life with you?
It's fine.
Fine. Okay. All right.
You know, I'd give it like a 7. Seven's pretty good.
Seven's solid. That's a passing grade. So, you'll graduate onto the next level of life.
Yeah, there is a saying, I'm not saying I said this, but there is a saying of C equals MD in medical school.
Okay. What was your saying? What was your version of that? You never known to pass up an aphorism.
I just wanted to equal MD. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So technically greater than or equals to D equals MD was your own personal talisman then here.
Yeah, it's a little more complex formula because, obviously you want to match and you want to pass boards and you want to, that type of stuff. So that's the simplified version.
What do you think? It's so, and we haven't gotten a chance to speak about this yet, but Florida passing a regulation that there's no more pass-fail med school criteria and it's only ordinal. Have you been following that?
Ned, that's like a whole other podcast episode. We can't do that in a podcast intro.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. I'm just saying.
But I think it should be a great podcast episode because I know we are due for a Q&A from our audience members. We have a lot of questions, I think, in the inbox, podcast at panaceafinancial.com to answer that we'll do shortly. But that's not what the focus of today's episode is. We have a very special guest with us, a very energetic fellow med-peds physician who is well known across the globe for lots of different good things that I'm really excited to join us so we can ask him lots of, I think, interesting questions. And we've known him for a very long time. Dr. Tommy Martin is joining us today.
He's also my co-faculty member, which you always forget to include as well in his bio. He and I are in the same physician group.
That is absolutely true. Co-faculty member of Dr. Palmer.
Yep.
Not my co-faculty member. We're just friends.
He's a co-Waffle House member, co-Waffle House friend with the three of us,
Yeah, we've enjoyed Waffle House together.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. Let's just dive right into our interview with Dr. Martin, which I think has some very interesting things to say about the state of medicine, especially as it regards to social media and where those two interact. So let's get to the interview. Today, we are thrilled to have Dr. Tommy Martin on the podcast. Dr. Martin is a renowned physician, fitness enthusiast, and influential voice in health and wellness. While earning his medical degree and completing his med-peds residency and training, he's become well known for blending his medical expertise with a passion for fitness, nutrition, and education. Through social media and public speaking, Dr. Martin empowers individuals to take proactive control over their health. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Martin.
Michael, Ned, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We are thrilled. Let's just jump right into it and tell us a little bit about your journey on why you even wanted to get into medicine in the first place.
Yeah, of course. It's kind of a long story, but I'll give you a very abridged version. So pretty much throughout high school, I thought I was going to be a teacher and a coach. I wanted to teach math and coach football, basketball, and baseball, and have the summers going to sports games and coaching something that I loved. Long story short, I had an encounter with someone that they told me that they believed that God was telling them that I should pursue medicine. Kind of thought the person was crazy, didn't think anything about it. And then when I graduated high school, my uncle bought me a new laptop. So I transferred all the stuff over from my old laptop onto my new laptop. And when I did that, I found a voice recording. I'm like, what in the world is this voice recording? And I played the voice recording, and it was that woman that had told me that when I was 14 years old, and she had me record it. And at that point, I was like, but I'm going to be a teacher and a coach. I really don't know if this is the path for me. But, that's interesting. So then I was going on a mission trip before I went to Kansas Wesleyan University, and it was in St. Louis, Missouri. And of course, all mission trips, they have an altar call during some point of the service. They play, nice fancy music and then do an altar call. And so I went down there. The pastor prayed over me, and as he was praying, he said that he believed that it was that I will become a physician and heal many people in Jesus' name. Is essentially like what it came down to. And I was like, what in the world? This is absolutely crazy. Like, he doesn't even know like my story. He doesn't know what I'm going to be doing. And so that's kind of my journey into medicine. Then I went to undergrad, and in undergrad, from that day forward, I, was all in medicine. So I did a pre-med major, and I, found that the career of medicine really aligned with, I think, my personality, with my aspirations, with my goals. And I think the whole coach and teacher thing is just maybe some of my interest, but wasn't really a passion and wasn't really what I think I was supposed to do. And so I know that all of our listeners may not be religious, but I am religious, and that's kind of like my story into medicine. And never look back.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Tommy. I think that's wonderful. I also like, as we'll unpack as we go through the rest of the topics, there's so many opportunities for coaching and for teaching in medicine, is I think where Michael is going to go. Like, okay, there may not be the physicality aspect of it, but also sometimes there is, if you're moving patients around or doing operations or procedures or things like that. There's actually a real dense overlap between those things. And frankly, it was the teaching aspect that really attracted me to medicine. I know that's actually a similar path to Michael, as we've talked about before from his experiences. So I love it.
And myself, I'm actually a resident coach. Interesting enough.
That makes sense. I mean, really, honestly, I was just seeing patients this morning. Like, a lot of it is coaching, right? It's basically, I have information that I'm trying to communicate to this person so I can modify behavior and change outcomes, which isn't always just I do something and the other person doesn't do anything. It really requires both people to participate in this exercise, and that requires coaching and humility and understanding how to understand where someone's coming from and effectively communicate information, which is like coaching, right? Or teaching, right? And I say that a lot to learners of, we're very smart as doctors. I'm not even the guest. I don't know why I'm talking. I'm sorry.
And yet, yeah.
And yet, is that we very smart, but sometimes we as doctors assume other people. So let me back up. We know a lot about medicine, and we therefore think our patients know a lot, right? So then we talk over their heads. That's one thing I really appreciate about you, Tommy, especially on your social media, and we'll get to this, how you're able to speak to the masses in a way that's accessible, not just to doctors, but to the masses who are non-clinical as well, which maybe probably scratches that itch a little bit of all the topics you mentioned that even made you want to get into medicine in the first place.
Yeah, I think so. I think, social media has been an incredible avenue to do just as what you were saying, to talk about medical education or medical things that are going on in our world that people need to have distilled to an understandable level. And so I think that's one of the huge, I think, pros of social media, and the fact that around 7 billion people are on social media. So you have access to 7 billion people just by having the device in the palm of your hand, which is pretty incredible.
It's pretty amazing, the scope and the reach that's possible. And we'll get more into the social media. I want to stick with some of the personal and educational stuff. I loved your openness in sharing about the divine inspirations that you had along the way. We certainly haven't heard many stories of that, about how people get into medicine. But, continuing to nurture you along the way, I'd love to hear about who were some of your key influences that kind of kept the spark alive. There's some dark times going through training, right? So like, what helped you, and who really helped you kind of keep this dream alive as you've gone through and now obviously to such success?
Yeah, goodness. So I'll talk a little bit more about my journey because that plays into it. But so in undergrad, I went to a small school mainly to play football, did a pre-med major, did well, graduated with a 3.9 GPA. Thought I didn't need to study for the MCAT, so I just went and took it. And obviously everyone knows that's a terrible idea, right? And so I did really bad, as expected. Got waitlisted at one school in the United States, but then decided to go to the Caribbean and went to St. George's University. And it was a huge wake-up call. Like, my first week of medical school covered my entire undergrad in the first week. It was like there was a fire truck with the biggest fire hose in the world that put it on full blast and made you take a drink from it, and I landed right on my butt. So it was just so challenging, and I could not, the first month, I just was like, how am I going to be able to do this? And so that is when I met a man by the name of Peter Slinger. He was actually my advisor and mentee throughout medical school. And he's not necessarily a religious person, but he was so instrumental in just believing in me, taking me under his wing, and teaching me study habits and having faith in me, and saying Tommy, I believe you came here for a reason, and it's not you should not give up. Do not, I know this is hard, and I know this is, one of the hardest things you ever done, but it will be worth it. Just do not give up, and I believe in you. And he was just so man, it makes me want to cry just thinking about him. He was so instrumental in my journey at St. George's. I just could not thank him enough. So he would be one person. Mark Clunes, he's also at the University of St. George's, another incredible role model. He was the physiology teacher, was a huge help. There's a lot of professors at St. George's University. I could name so many of them that I think was very instrumental in my journey. And then when we got to residency, there's a lot more as well.
So I want to talk about like the challenges because you led with one, right? And you and I share that being Caribbean graduates, there's a different layer of challenges that comes with going to school in the Caribbean. But if you could speak to some of the other challenges that you've experienced and then kind of, what structures you have in place to overcome them. A lot of our listeners are doctors in training. They want to hear how we got through these difficult times.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little personal, which I obviously, we could tell by now I'm an open book on the podcast. So going through my medical school journey, so the years in St. George's were probably the hardest years of my life. Not only because medical school was hard, but my life back at home in the United States was falling apart. One of my parents has a substance abuse problem, and unfortunately, they relapsed and destroyed our family again. And so our family was completely broken. My grandmother had passed away a little bit before that. I had a cousin who committed suicide, and I had another aunt or uncle who passed away during that time. And so within a span of like 3 months, our world was completely shattered. And I was in the Caribbean. I was away from home. And so I was hearing from my sisters who was kind of picking up all the pieces of what was going on. And there was a lot of guilt that came with that. There was a lot of feelings of just selfishness coming with that I was off pursuing my dreams as they were taking care of things at home. And that was, and then on top of that, I was about to fail out of medical school. And so I was, it was just as if my whole world was just crumbling and I was just trying to make it by. And I think some aspects that was very instrumental to overcoming that, one would be my faith. That definitely kept me grounded and kept me moving forward, and some certain Bible verses that I would read every single day. But then on top of that, having a really good community of friends and family, whether it be on the island or back at home too, that I was talking to every day. And I remember countless nights that some of my undergrad buddies, that they'd stay up and talk to me as I was, struggling and couldn't sleep and just dealing with the stress of things that was going on at home. And so I think having a very close-knit network of friends and family, and then also my faith was a big part.
Yeah, we talk a lot and we hear from a lot of people about just frankly how important that network is. Med school, of course, residency where I met Michael here and stuff like that. And like he became a big part of my network, even though I don't tell him that and won't give him any credit for it. But it really is. It's such an important part about medical school because it's so isolating in so many ways, especially the Caribbean side where you're geographically separated and isolated. Like there's a higher barrier where you really have to like push yourself to make sure that you're maintaining those connections. I don't know how it was at St. George. At Ross, it was like you could almost pick the kids who just weren't going to make it because they were isolated. Too isolated. No family, no friends on the island, like no contacts and like no support. And as a result, unfortunately, like they just lost the thread of their dream.
Yeah, same as St. George's, I'd say.
How have those experiences, which again, thank you for sharing and being so open and honest, like how have those experiences through med school shaped your approach as you continue to become a doctor in residency and now into attending Hood?
Yeah, I think they have shaped it entirely. And so, one of my favorite quotes is that your current sufferings will not compare with the glory revealed within. And then likewise, rejoice in sufferings of all kinds, knowing that they're going to produce in you endurance, character, perseverance, and hope. And so I know I went through hell, but keeping that in my mind, that hell that I went through, it was going to create in me great endurance, great perseverance, great character, and hope of what to be at the end. And so when you go into residency, it is hard. You're working 80 hours a week, you're super stressed, you're battling imposter syndrome, you're trying to battle burnout, you're trying to hold on to the things that you love outside of medicine. And so for me, I just kept grounded that all of this is suffering, but I'm going to be joyous in this suffering, knowing that all of these things that are causing me suffering right now, they're going to produce in me an incredible doctor. They're going to produce in me a doctor that's going to love on my patients. They're going to produce in me a doctor that's competent. They're going to produce in me a doctor that's caring and loving and nurturing to my patients, all while still doing the things I love outside of medicine when my life allows for it. And so I think keeping that as my foundation and then going throughout residency and allowing for time to do things that I love, spending time with friends and family, with my beautiful wife, with my kiddo, all those things definitely helped me get through residency as well.
I love that mindset and that frame set, and I hope that that's what you're teaching during your residency coaching sessions, because it frankly, it takes hardship and applies a positive lens to it, right? That like suffering has value and will make you a better and more empathic doctor, and that this hard work has intrinsic value beyond just memorizing the Krebs cycle or some other terrible thing we were forced to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
it makes you a better doctor, unlike a lot of the things we're told early on, which you're supposed to know to be a doctor.
Right. No, I agree completely. And I think on hour 70, I'm going to share a story with you guys just because I know that we don't have a ton of time, but I'm going to share this story anyway. So I was working a long week on service, and you guys know inpatient medicine can be brutal. And we had a son at this time, and I was already late, and I get an admission right before I was about to leave, right? And so everyone is just frustrated when that happens, and I was burnt out, tired, wanted to be home to tuck my son in. So I went to go to the patient's room and just went through the motions. It's like, why are you here? What's going on? Da, 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 da. Well, unfortunately, this patient probably wasn't going to live very long. And the patient says to me, I could tell you want to get out of here, so just ask me what you need to ask, get it done, and get out of here. And like, I took a step back, I'm like, ouch. Like, this is not the type of doctor that I went into medicine to be. And so I took, like, that patient really woke me up. And so then I reframed my whole framework. And before I left the room, I said, so if you had one last thing to eat before you passed away, what would it be? And the patient said, carrots with lemons. I was like, what? Like, what in the, who in the world would ever ask for carrots with lemons? And they said, carrots with lemons. And I said, okay. I walked out and left. Well, the next day when I went home, obviously tired, went to bed late, woke up early, and I made carrots with lemons. And I walked into the patient's room, and literally as soon as I walk in, they said, oh my gosh, you made it. And I said, what? You made carrots with lemons. That's what my mother made for me when I was a kid, and that's the last thing I'd want to eat before I passed away. And so I share that story not to say, oh, Tommy did great things, but to show like that suffering has a purpose, right? Like that staying after for an hour, that missing the bedtime with my son, that experience, even though it was suffering in the moment, had incredible, incredible purpose. But it's like, how are you looking at that suffering? How are you looking at that opportunity? And you like, it's such an honor and privilege to have that opportunity with the patient and make it into an incredible, incredible encounter.
Yeah, I thank you. I love that story because you were going to use that time. You were going to miss the bedtime. Like, let's be honest, right? Like, and there's that.
Either way, right?
You were gonna miss it. There's a loss that you've already taken in one area. So like, how do you make sure that you maintain or recover the value? And I think it's on recentering what you're in it for, right? Like, keep the patient at the center, like we all try to do, we all struggle to do, and I've could share stories where I also likely failed at that, and I probably didn't recover nearly as gracefully as you did. But yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant, right? Like, the job is going to take so much, and so if by giving a little back, can you recover some of what gets lost? Then I think there's something brilliant in that. Yeah, yeah. I want to turn to talk about we can't talk about you, even though we're co-faculty and we could nerd out all day on MedPed stuff. We need to talk about you as a social media influencer and that impact on your life. And so there's a parallel story here. There's your life in medicine, but then there's also this other identity of a health influencer and a wellness influencer. And I really want to understand how you came to develop that almost in parallel to your developing, doctor in training.
Yeah, for sure. So, social media, I have honestly been doing social media since 2013, although no one would know that because I was obviously a very small creator in 2013. And how it came about was my wife had said, Tommy, like you're spending, or I guess it was 2014, Tommy, you're spending so much time meeting with students, like teaching them how to study, doing, just doing mentorship. Why don't you just start a social media account and funnel people to that so you quit having 10 meetings a day? And I was like, what a brilliant idea. And so I made a deal. I was like, God, if it helps one person, I'll never stop making content. So all I had was an iPad mini, first generation. That's what I filmed with. That's what I edited with. That's what I uploaded with. And I started making content. And so from 2013 to 2019, I worked hard on social media. I was posting almost 3 times a day on majority of platforms. And the growth was slow, but I had made a deal and I was going to keep that end of the deal. In 2019, I saw a video by Gary Vaynerchuk who said, if you're not on TikTok, you're missing the boat. And I was like, all right, well, let me see what TikTok's about. So I studied that for 2 weeks, saw what videos did well, what videos didn't do well, made my first video, and it hit around 300,000 views and I had 50,000 followers overnight. And then from there, it kind of transformed into where it is now with about 4.5-ish million followers across platforms, where I have been able to lead advocacy for my son and his really rare genetic disorder. I've had the opportunity to be a keynote speaker for the WHO on stopping the spread of misinformation online. I've been an ambassador for the National Infectious Disease Society of America on also stopping the spread of misinformation. And so it has transformed into this role of being a reliable source of medical information online. And as I said before, I think it's such a responsibility of physicians that if we have the opportunity to reach 7 billion people, it's not a luxury that we have a cell phone. It's not a luxury that we have social media, but it should be like a requirement. It should be something that every physician has to do because we have access to all these people, knowing that's where they look for their information at.
Mm-hmm. So within that, like, there's a bunch of questions that I know we're going to ask about the social media influencing part. Like, first, like, there's a lot of information about doctors online. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, what we saw, like some of the biggest spreaders of misinformation were physicians or physician associated networks. So like, how do you speak with authenticity and the realism? And frankly, how do you make sure that you stay true to it? It is frankly an ongoing challenge of like, healthcare lives in a world of gray of what's good and what's bad. And so like, how do you maintain and make sure you're connecting and communicating authentically?
Yeah, of course. So there are some things that are just hard truths that we know from literature, right? Like that it is sound. Every governing body agrees on it. So
Measles vaccines. Let's just yeah.
I love that you said. I was going to say that. I was like, I hope this isn't too controversial.
No, I mean, look, as 3 pediatricians, I think we can all probably say measles vaccines might be right down the middle of the pipe for us.
So one example would be measles vaccines and saying that they're efficacious and that the benefits far outweigh the risk, right? Like that is any governing medical body and institution would agree with that, right? And so you can make content on that confidently knowing that you are doing the correct thing, right? Whereas there may be some gray areas, such as some maybe new weight loss supplements that are coming out, not the medications. Weight loss medications are evidence-based, have decades of research on them, but there's some supplements that maybe the research isn't there yet. So to make content and give hard and fast answers and guaranteed results on things that we do not have research yet, it just doesn't make sense. And so kind of where I stay grounded with is covering topics that are well established, backed by all the governing medical bodies. And I try not to cover too controversial things unless that it is needed, such as the measles vaccine.
You can't always tell what's going to be controversial. I think we've created controversy around items where I would tell you 5 years ago I wouldn't have thought were controversial. So
Skippy peanut butter. Literally just made a video about Skippy peanut butter. People are going ballistic about Skippy peanut butter.
Explain that. I'm very interested now.
Yeah, which direction? I don't know what I'm supposed to feel.
It's just the type of oils that they use in peanut butter that people are complaining about and saying, I'm going to die and stuff. I'm like, yeah, if you want to compare metabolic numbers with me, I'm more than happy to compare our lab results.
But I mean, look, there is a whole world of peanut controversy, and even at the medical level, right? Early feeding of peanuts and allergies, or allergic families, like that was a study that came out, I think, when we were late into residency and completely changed practice. So I like wading in on peanut controversies.
I think we just stumbled upon the title of this podcast episode, The Peanut Controversy.
The peanut controversy.
Oh my goodness, that's too funny.
Tommy Martin wades in on the peanut controversy.
Oh man. Okay, one other thing that I'll add to that is, and we've said this a lot, but it's so important to have a good network, right? And so I have a really good network of medical professionals who are active online that we kind of double check each other, right? And so we're looking at each other's content. And if I make anything that's a little bit off or maybe isn't the most evidence based, they immediately tell me and they give me their sources to why they disagree with me or why it's off. And I think that's so beneficial, right? None of us are perfect. And it's so important to be so humble in this space because we're all trying to do what's most important. And that is to provide the best education, the best value for our patients, and with it being evidence-based. And so I think having a network like that can be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing peer-reviewed social media health and wellness effectively at that point. You've got a network supporting you. All right, couple of quick questions here. Do your patients recognize you? Probably not at Boston Children's Hospital. Maybe the adults. Maybe not.
I will say usually when I'm on service, at least a couple of patients recognize me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do they look for you, or do they already?
Yeah, I'd say that I don't think people necessarily look for me just because a lot of my social media does not talk about my place of work. And so I don't think it's like widely known, where I work necessarily. And so I'd say that they see me and they're like, oh, I recognize that. Or often what actually happens is my voice. So people will hear me talking and then turn and be like, wait, I know that person. I know that voice. And then they're trying to place where did that voice come from? So I think that happens more often than anything.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Is that both look, is MedPeds, is that both on the adult and the pediatric side? Like you're getting recognized on both sides? Yeah.
Yeah, probably I'd say the adult population more. So even on the pediatric side, the parents more so than the children. And then on the adult side, the actual patients.
It's the actual patients. Okay. All right. And what are the biggest misconception that social media commenters, like participants, have about doctors that you've seen?
Yeah, I think and this is something I disagree with, and I'm actually starting a podcast to talk about it. But it is that doctors should not be human. Okay, and what I mean by that is that a lot of people think that doctors should not have a life outside of medicine. That like if you're like so for example, if I show a video of me working out, people like commenters will be like that's inappropriate, like you don't need to be working out on social media or and I'm like, well, I am a physician, but that's a very small part of who I am. Like it's not who I am. Like I have so much more to offer and there's so much more about myself and I have so many other passions that I want to share with the world that being a doctor is a very small part of the entirety of who I am. And so it's okay for me to share my life as a doctor, medical education. It's okay for me to share my passions outside of medicine. It's okay for me to advocate for rare diseases and syndromes because my son has it. And so I would say that there's a huge misconception that doctors should not be human, that they should be a robot and that they should only do doctor things. And that's just not reality. And I think that's truly what leads to burnout.
What's interesting to me about that is that I think is generational even within doctors too, right? The social media commenters are saying that to you, but I think generationally, there's also a little bit of that in a generation maybe before us of, hey, this really is your life and this is all what your life is. And if you're doing anything outside of that, that cuts into kind of your calling, which you, I think, are the first guests that literally had a calling to medicine that they could talk about. But we've talked about this with several other guests and I am strongly opinionated on this, but I totally agree with everything you said, because once you start to dehumanize yourself and you become kind of, maybe you're feel guilty, or your mentors in med school and residency had this kind of superhero, this is a calling, but sometimes it can feel like a job, and that's okay. It's a really awesome job. The stories you even talked about, how you've helped just a couple of patients anecdotally here, is amazing. Like no other job really can do something like that. But at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of patients, right? And the extra committee meeting at six in the morning on Wednesdays that's not paid, or the extra thing for your residency program that's obviously really cool, but at the end of the day isn't paid and cuts into your time of, somewhat trying to be a human outside of medicine, may not be worth it. I think our generation is more prone now to be like, I'm actually okay. I don't need my painting on the wall amongst people that no one will know who I am in 5 years, or some title that once I leave, someone else will take it and it doesn't really matter. Like I always go back to a saying I heard from an amazing mentor I had in residency that said, institutional memory is short, but patient memory is long. So that is like stuck with me all the way on all of the little administrative things that people ask you to do and maybe guilt you into doing and being like, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to focus on taking care of patients. But I I think that's a misconception, I guess, all that hot air to say misconception among social media commenters, but also doctors. I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, like you said, I believe it's generational, and I think Gen Z is really gonna throw that out the window. I shouldn't say any other comments before I get us in trouble. But so yeah, I definitely think it's generational. But I would argue that even though the generation, maybe the generation above us believes that to be a good doctor, yeah, that's it. Like that's 100% your life. I would argue against that. I would argue that if you want a doctor that is joyous, that is excited to be there, that is going to give you 100%, then you also need a doctor that gets to do the things that they love outside of medicine. Because for me, when I get to work out in the morning, when I get to spend time with my family at night, I go to work the next day literally jacked out of my face to be a doctor, right? Like I filled up my cup to where it's like literally overflowing, that it probably is overflowing a little too much. And when I'm at the hospital, they're like, Tommy, tone it down a bit, okay? Too much happiness right now, right? And so I think that by doing those things outside of medicine, it makes you into the doctor that you're supposed to be. It makes you into an incredible physician because you're not resenting medicine.
Yes. I think what's interesting too about you specifically is you're probably the healthiest person I know, just in general, but definitely the healthiest doctor I know. Although there's a lot of doctors that are kind of into fitness for sure, but I, as a doctor, have treated many other doctors as patients. And we already talked about how grueling our schedule can be and how sometimes dehumanizing. You put the job first and put yourself second, which means your health sometimes goes away. What are some advice, or I guess, you give to trainees or those that are actually in medicine or healthcare to try to stay healthy despite their stressful, high energy, kind of high demand job?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few different things that I'd say. So one would be make sure that you do not give up the things that you love outside of medicine. And this could be 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day. So even if you're working in an 80-hour work week, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, do the thing that really fills you up and that you enjoy doing. Number two would be to sleep as much as possible. And in residency, that can be very, very challenging. And I'm a hypocrite because I don't sleep enough. But science will tell you that the more you sleep, the better your stress will be controlled, the better your hunger hormones are controlled, the better adaptability you have, and the better resilience that you have when stressful things come up. And so, sleeping as much as you possibly can will definitely make you healthier. A third would be to exercise in a way that you enjoy daily, and even small doses of exercise has shown to have profound benefit. So even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes a day of walking or jogging or tiny bit of strength training, that'll add up over time, and you're not doing 80-hour weeks every single week. And then so on the weeks that you have less, then you could do more, and it's just literally whatever way that you enjoy. And then the last thing, I guess the last two things, one would be to try to eat whole foods. It's obviously basic, but at the hospital you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of non-whole foods, but try to eat as much whole foods as you possibly can, and then but do not overly restrict yourself. And then the last thing would be spend time with like-minded people that are positive and bring you up instead of bring you down. Because in residency, the two drastic groups, very negative, very positive. Go to this side. Go to the positive side. And then from afar, try to bring other people to that side.
Yes. What's interesting, I mean, I can go through all five of those and see where I maybe messed up at all five of those in residency. But I think just like financial habits in residency and training, the healthy habits in residency and training, you can have, if you start to establish it, then you're more likely to be able to do it as an attending. Because I think there's a little bit of a false sentiment, at least I had in residency, of, oh, once I become an attending, then I will have more time to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And that's actually not the case a lot of times for many of us, right? And sometimes it's even worse in many ways. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, since you engage in the health space and engage with doctors a lot, are there any misconceptions that doctors hold about fitness or nutrition that you encounter? Is there any common thing?
Oh my goodness, tons.
Tell me what grinds your gears, as they'd say on Family Guy.
We're going to be so controversial.
I can't wait.
Okay, so one would be, so creatine is not bad for you and it does not hurt your kidneys. That'd be one. Two, artificial sweeteners are not bad for you, and the research is pretty sound that it can have net positive, at least net neutral, maybe net positive benefit, especially in the obesity population. So it has been shown to help with weight, and it is not inflammatory. It does not cause cancer. A lot of the studies that show those things are done on rodents and mice with absurd doses that would kill probably a human anyway, you know? And so I'd say that artificial sweeteners are probably net neutral, but may have net benefit. Unless another study comes out that debunks everything, there'd have to be a lot of them because there's a lot of sound research on it. Another one that we hear often would be that seed oils are bad for you, and that they're like inflammatory. There's no study that shows that seed oils are inflammatory, and it also shows that seed oils actually have cardiovascular and a multitude of other comorbid benefits when comparative to other fats and oils. Let me think of what else. That fasted cardio. A lot of these are fitness related, but I hear a lot of doctors talking about it. Probably because we don't get enough nutrition and exercise training. That fasted training burns more fat than fed training. So that meaning if you work out without eating, then it's only going to burn fat, and that's just not true at all. We actually see that it's probably neutral, but in some studies it shows that fed training actually helps you to work harder, perform better, and maybe burn more calories throughout that workout anyway. So those would be a handful of ones that I have that I think I hear most often. And why I think I hear them is like I'll be in the hospital drinking a Diet Coke, and another doctor will come up to me and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're a doctor and you're drinking a Diet Coke." I'm like, come on.
Yeah, that's Michael too, but he has no health benefit knowledge whatsoever. Just deep Southern genetics.
So you're saying it's okay for my protein, creatine, peanut butter shake, artificially sweetened with Splenda is okay to drink after this?
1,000%.
Okay, good.
I could talk about this for hours. What a lot of people do not know is that the ADI for the artificial sweeteners that we use, that's how many how much you can consume in a day for the rest of your life to not have adverse effects, is about 21 cans of soda. Right? Like, who in the right mind is consuming 21 cans of soda? No one, right? So.
But you can have way other issues with like your acid base status and phosphorus. Like you're not going to run into issues with aspartame.
And our dentist colleagues might have a problem with that too, for other reasons.
Yeah.
Well, talking about fitness trends, we see a lot. So that you kind of talked about some of the debunking what doctors think, but in general now, on the fitness trends, what is the most overrated fitness trend you've seen on social media recently?
Ooh, I'm going to get hate for saying this probably, but the trend of being a hybrid athlete. And why I say I'm going to get hate on that is because I would say that I'm a hybrid athlete. But I would say that like everybody under the sun is just trying to do like so many different things in fitness that I think that they're truly just spinning their wheels. And like, I think it's amazing to be fit, to lift heavy weights, to do cardio and stuff. But I think too many people are trying to take on too much, and then they just spin their wheels and they don't reach their goals in any category. And so I think being a hybrid athlete right now is what everyone's trying to do and to become. But I think they don't understand that it takes years and years of training in each discipline to really achieve some of the goals that people have set out.
Interesting. I have not heard that. I am interested if you were to, just given your passion and how much you know about this, if you could eliminate one unhealthy habit from everyone's routine immediately with the snap of your fingers, what would that unhealthy habit be?
Not sleeping 8 hours a night. And I would be included in that. My Garmin is on me all the time, and I would have so many health benefits from sleeping more. And so I think that would be the one. We see that sleep helps with longevity. We see that it helps with weight neutrality. We see that it helps with recovery from exercise, with muscle growth, with stress recovery. Sleep is if someone wants a magic potion, if someone wants a magic drug, a magic pill to be the best that they could be, it'd be sleeping as much as you possibly can.
What is your Garmin? What's your Garmin say your average is? You're not allowed to say.
Can't talk about it. Can't talk about
it. Okay. All right.
So last year was 5 hours and 46 minutes.
Annual average?
My annual average, yeah.
Oof, okay.
This year I'm doing better. It's about 6:45. My goal for this year is to truly be 7 and above. So we're trying hard.
I can't wait to talk to you in March of 2026 and see where you wound up for 2025.
I don't think anybody wants to see me with more sleep. Like, I don't know what would happen if I had more sleep.
What the first thing I would notice is maybe 4 or 5 more exclamation points in all your text messages.
Every hour of sleep, you get another couple exclamation points. There's got to be a multiple in there somewhere.
It has to be it.
That is the best comment ever. You would not believe, you probably would believe, how many people at my place of work that was like, so until meeting you, I didn't understand why you send emails like you do, but you send emails like you do because that's who you are. Like, yeah, you're right. That's you are correct.
Yes, a lot of people use exclamation points in emails to like sound nice, but they're actually not really, and they don't really want to communicate anything nice, but they think it'll be better received. But for you, you're actually that excited for every single sentence.
So it's acceptable.
It's acceptable. I know we're wrapping up. I know, Ned, you have a couple of questions on just kind of professional stuff, and then we have some rapid fire questions I want to end with. But Ned.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a couple of fun ones here at the end. So, like, if you had complete control over medical education for one day, what would you immediately implement across the board for everyone?
Goodness, there are so many things, and I'm sure like a lot of residents and stuff would want like it to be wages or work hours, but honestly, I don't think any of that creates happiness. Like you make more money, yeah, it helps, but that's not happiness. You work a little bit less, that's not necessarily happiness. So for me, just because I think that it could benefit their overall health and everything would be either like you said, I would probably implement that every training or every residency has its own personal workout center that includes everything from cardio to weights to Pilates to yoga to like absolutely everything they can, and that every resident gets 1 hour a week at least to do that activity.
I like that, like protected physical time.
Yeah, protected physical health. Yeah.
Protected physical health time. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Because it's also an hour away from work. Like somebody else carries your pager or something else. Like I love that because you get a lot of what people are asking for, which is I'm drowning or I'm stressed or I'm something else. And like, here's an hour to disconnect. Like, if it, 20 minutes of that or half of that could be meditation, as a quiet room associate, like all of that, like that would be, I love it. I love it. Okay. Okay. Another question here is there a moment in your career, as our relentless optimist here, but is there a moment in your career where you almost quit medicine?
So I'll talk about two instances. One would be, I already talked about, was in medical school during my first year when my family life was falling apart, when, I wasn't doing well in school and I was just questioning, am I able to do this? Can I do this? So that would be probably the most like serious time. And I would say all throughout my training before I became an actual doctor, there was multiple times where I thought maybe I should just leave medicine and do some sort of philanthropy stuff instead of like going throughout the career of becoming a doctor and then doing stuff like that later on. So there's like multiple times where I was like, maybe I should just be done and go do these things that I want to do, And so maybe those two instances. Yeah, now there's been other extremely hard times in medicine where I didn't question what I was doing, but that I was like broken in medicine. One was my first week as an attending.
What helped you stay? You stayed, through being broken, through these challenging scenarios. Like what helped you stay?
So just like what I was talking about earlier is that my framework and my foundation of everything in my life is that whatever that end goal is, and for me it is caring for patients and having those magical moments at the bedside with patients, that trumps all the suffering. Knowing that all the hell, all the suffering that I was going to go through was going to lead to moments like that I experienced, that I talked about with carrots and lemons and, multitude of others. Knowing that moments like that was on the other end of this, I would go through the hell that I went through times 10. I'd go through it times 15. I'd go through it times 20. I'd go take on double the debt to get the opportunity to have the honor and privilege of being someone's physician and serving them at the bedside. And even to this day, even though I've went through it, I still say this. Like, it is such an incredible, rewarding job. And I think it's the best job in the world.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you. I would not tell St. George's you'd pay twice as much, because if they're anything like Ross,
I'll take it.
yeah, they'll take it.
Actually, I think they're calling me right now. Dang.
Crazy, so.
We have some rapid fire questions. So these are actually statements, and you have to tell us if you think they're true or false.
Oh boy.
So here we go. Let's get started. Carbs are unfairly demonized. True or false?
True.
Residency is harder than medical school.
False.
I agree with that too. Most doctors neglect their own health.
True.
Morning workouts are better than evening workouts.
Both are incredible, but I'll say true.
I kind of figured you couldn't say that. Okay. Influencer culture has more positives than negatives.
Ooh, this is going to be unpopular, but false.
Tell me why.
We'll just say that the wellness industry is around a $6.5 trillion industry based upon them selling products that don't work to steal people's money. And so I would say that comes from influencer marketing, a lot of it, right? And I think that a lot of influencer marketing without sound evidence and integrity leads to a very corrupt system of selling things that truly do not work. And in a world where you can demonize healthcare and make it seem like healthcare is out to get you, but then give a shiny new product that no one's ever heard of for $100 a month, people will buy the shiny new product that has no evidence. And so I think from that aspect, and that's another reason why I advocate for physicians to be on social media, because there's so much that we have to overcome that we cannot do it unless we have a very large body of physicians willing to step out there and do it.
What do you think about TikTok Shop?
Ooh, I have a love-hate relationship. I would say I've got some great things on TikTok Shop, but I've got some really cheap is a bad word, but like really not good stuff off TikTok Shop. But I think the thing I have the biggest problem with it. So one example will be there's this electrolyte supplement, and you'll have these. I shouldn't say this. You'll have this certain type of provider go on TikTok Shop and be like, are you having brain fog and you feel tired all the time and you're weak and you just wake up and you don't feel good? All you need is this electrolyte supplement. Buy it for $50, and they make $5 on everyone they sell. And so I think it's a way for people to scam people. And so I don't like that aspect of it. But then it has been life-changing for some people. And I know that some people do it with great integrity, but people that may not have that integrity, they're still making a killing by doing it by lying to people.
It's not like we don't want people to feel better.
Right.
We of course want that. The first part of our oath, though, is do no harm. So we take that very seriously. Here's a statement. Tommy Martin could run a marathon right now in under 4:30.
Yes.
Like right now, no warm-ups. You just literally run right now. No, you're like, yeah, wow.
He's going to. Like, as soon as we're done, that's his next thing on his calendar.
What is your PR?
My PR is 250.
Okay, so that was a really great question that I wrote there. Thank you.
You're gonna say like with a weighted vest or like pushing Oliver or like I was waiting for what was coming next.
No, yeah. Sorry. I missed. My screen is shortened, so I didn't get that last part. 4:30, dragging 4 other people behind you. Sorry, I missed that part.
Carrying Michael because that's what he thinks is a good marathon time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, last true or false. Sleep is more important than exercise for overall health.
Oh man! After everything I've said on this podcast, that is so hard. I'm gonna say true.
Okay, it's consistent at least. I appreciate that with the earlier answers.
That was a hard one. I'm actually gonna have to research this as soon as we're done.
I can't wait to get what the research-based answer is.
Because I don't know like the true evidence behind it, but I know that there's great benefit to both. But I think sleep will win. I don't know.
Well, last question. We always ask everybody this, Ned and I do. We are flooded with information all the time, more than ever, but not all the time do we listen to information actually change our views. We likely reinforce our opinions, many of us. So my question to you is, what's one thing you've actually recently changed your mind about?
This is terrible.
I can't wait.
No, it's terrible because you prepared me and I still don't know. So that's why it is so terrible. I'm trying to, like, when you ask me, I'm trying to think of like a new study that came out or something that like.
It doesn't have to be about medicine. It can be anything.
Okay, this is actually true. I would hope it's true if I'm going to say it. So I previously thought that you needed to carb load for a marathon for about 3 to 5 days leading up to your race. But the most current literature, I think it was out of 2022, shows that you actually only need to carb load if you do it correctly for 2 days leading up to your race. And when you do that, you'll consume about 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of carbohydrates, depending on the person. And so when I'm carb loading for a race, I do 10 grams per kilogram of body weight of carbs the 2 days before and then the day before of carbohydrates.
Because if you didn't, you might run over a 4:30. Is that what you're saying?
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, this was very fun. Dr. Martin, thanks for all the work you do. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, of course. Any of my social media accounts, they're all the same handle. It's just the @ and then Dr. Tommy Martin. So Dr. Tommy Martin on all platforms.
Amazing. Dr. Martin, thanks for joining us today. This is great. Thanks for your work you do, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us this episode. You can catch the podcast For Doctors by Doctors on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all the major podcasting platforms. If you enjoyed this episode or learned anything here today, please take a moment to give us a rating and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode release. As always, thank you for listening. The next time you see a doctor, maybe you should prescribe this podcast. We'll see you next time.